Good day, everybody, and welcome to TDC 22. My name is Caitlin Poore, and this show is part of a program called The Mustard Seeds. We are interviewing a number of people who have had moments of, the best way to put it would be epiphany, when they've discovered something that they didn't know they knew, didn't know they were looking for, and it led to remarkable discoveries for themselves and benefits for everybody. They say that pain is the teacher and wisdom is the lesson. And for our guest today, Shannon Desormeaux, if that's true, then she's well on her way to becoming Yoda. I'm going to tell you, and you're going to find out from our conversation, that this young woman has been through unexpected difficulties. Not to say that she hasn't exactly brought them upon herself, because from the time that I've known Shannon, she's kind of been inviting challenges into her life. This beautiful young woman you see sitting here next to me was at one time a volunteer firefighter, and is still hoping to go back into that once all of her current issues are resolved with her children. Now that brings us to a whole different level of difficulty. Children are innocence, children are beauty, children are our hope for the future, and when difficult things, painful things happen to children, we tend to get very angry at, in many cases, very angry at God, thinking, if there was a God, how could these things happen? Well, I say to you that God is a reflection of us. God is a consciousness. God reflects our consciousness. And if bad things are happening to innocent people in the world today, it's because we have been putting a lot of bad things out into that world. So sometimes children come along and they become our love teachers. As Shannon will tell you, this courageous young woman, she has learned more about love from this little child of hers than she could ever have imagined and hoped for. That's enough for me. I'll leave you to judge the rest from listening to Shannon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kat.
And thank you very much for coming in. I know that you are now a woman who barely sleeps, who is always worried, never knowing what shoe is going to drop. Tell us a little bit about this angel of yours, this little Theo, who has turned your world on its end and made you discover things that you never thought you could before. Tell us a little bit about his illness first. About him and his illness.
Him and his illness. Well, he's become quite the celebrity around the community. Theodore was diagnosed with an extremely rare genetic mutation disorder called KCNH1. What it is, he's the first in Canada to be diagnosed with this genetic disorder, and there's only a handful of them in the world who have this genetic disorder. And it's a potassium-gated channel that attacks his central nervous system in his body. This genetic mutation can specifically have many different issues, such as heart issues, liver issues, kidney issues. One of the biggest side effects of this genetic disorder are seizures. He has many seizures. And a complication that we've experienced with his seizures, he actually experiences cardiopulmonary failure with his seizures, which often happen at nighttime. Most of his seizures happen at nighttime, and they usually put him out for about a week, anywhere from 2 days to about a week. He's in the hospital, oftentimes unresponsive. I'd like to say we have a little bit of a handle on his seizures, and he's learning to control his body a little bit better. But he puts himself into almost like a recovery for about a week after the seizure happens. And he can't be...
Sorry to interrupt, but could you back up? Because I think this is a very important aspect of what's going on with Theo. He has a seizure.
He does.
And then he goes into a coma.
Yes.
And during that time, he manages his body, is what you're saying?
He does. So his vital signs are okay. There have been times where he needed medical intervention, such as, oxygen, because his oxygen kept dipping. But 95% of the time, his vital signs are fine throughout this week. He just becomes unresponsive. And it's almost as if his seizure is like a reboot to his body, and he shuts down for the week and he manages his body himself, and we just work through it, and there's no answers as to what happens. There's no answers as to why. They still have no idea what happens during this week. But he comes out of it and he's like a brand new Theodore again, and he's usually good for another 4 to 6 weeks.
Do you have any warning when a seizure is coming on?
We don't, no.
Do you have any pattern of things happening that cause a seizure?
No. We do know that they often happen anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So between that 4 to 6 week mark, we're walking on eggshells. And this time in particular, his levels were fine. Before, during, and right after the seizure, they were fine. They were where they were supposed to be. We had no warning other than knowing between the 4 and 6 week mark it was going to happen, and we just had to be on top of him.
But there is really nothing you can do except to sit there and keep guard, keep watch, 24-hour watch.
That's right. Theodore cannot be medically treated at all. He cannot have any sort of medication. They're still trying to figure out if this has something to do with the genetic mutation or not. But his body rejects anything that's not natural. So any kind of medication or food that's not completely natural, that has some sort of GMOs or antibiotics or hormones in it, his body rejects whatever goes into his body that is not natural. So we have him on a ketogenic diet to maintain his seizures, which have made a very, very big difference. But other than that, no, there's nothing.
So then your first sign that there was something wrong with Theo was with his first vaccination, is that correct?
It was right after his first vaccinations.
Okay.
We believe at this point that he may have been born with the genetic mutation, but when he got to the vaccines, we believe that because he had a reaction immediately right after the vaccinations, and this is when all of the issues started. We believe that his body, because it cannot take any sort of toxic foreign bodies within his body, we believe it caused some sort of chemical reaction in his body and brought the onset of all of the complications that he's now dealing with.
And it was quite severe at the time because he reacted to you, to your breast milk, to your body, to everything.
I'd be breastfeeding him and he'd get blisters around his mouth anywhere where he touched my skin. He was allergic to bath water at one point. We had to use baking soda to neutralize the chemicals in the bath. He was allergic to...
How did you think of doing that? How did you think of using baking soda?
I searched it on the internet. Dr. Google, help me.
Dr. Google.
Dr. Google. I've learned a lot about homeopathic ways and trusting the body's natural way of healing itself, and just learning a whole new way to live with Theodore. And it was a lot of research, a lot of hours, a lot of time, but we don't sleep, so I've had a lot of that time to do so.
Now, your experience with the hospitals has been rocky.
Devastating.
Devastating.
It's been devastating.
I don't know how many people, I don't know if you're familiar with the term iatrogenesis, when doctors cause illnesses or aggravate illnesses in children. It's a term that's been around for a long time. It's not something that we can blame our current highly challenged system for, but it's definitely a factor because medicine and science, with everything that it knows, still doesn't know everything.
No.
And a mother's gut feeling is really something to be listened to. Now, in your case, you have a very strong gut feeling. You have a very strong spiritual life, and you have learned to trust it. A lot of people have a strong spiritual life, but still don't trust it. The fact that you do has probably saved your child's life.
It has, yes.
It has.
Definitely has.
And the doctors or the medical system, because that's nurses as well, have learned to listen to you.
They have.
They have.
Recently, it was a very big fight for the first, I'd say the first 15 to 16 months of his life. It was a constant battle with the medical system. We have a great family physician who backed us up 100%, and she was amazing, and she fought hard with us. And but it was really challenging because the medical system wanted to take different routes and find different ways to deal with him, and wanted to do what they thought would be appropriate with something that they knew nothing about. And the personal things that I've experienced at home with Theodore, and knowing that his body cannot handle the toxic foreign bodies that would go into him, obviously putting him on different treatments at the hospital, and them doing different things just wasn't what needed to be done.
That does seem to be an approach, is just try everything.
Try everything. And I think a lot of it was ignorance. They just didn't know how to help him. They thought at the beginning he just had allergies. And then they thought that he had acid reflux. And he wasn't having seizures. He was just having acid reflux, and it would cause movements. They were very dismissive of everything until I started taking videos, and I started reading up, and we got many hospitals involved, and I was in touch with a hospital in Paris, France, and they started giving us different routes to take, and they convinced us to do a certain genetic testing. And this is where everything finally came to the table with Theodore. He was only about 14 or 15 months, I believe, when he finally got the diagnosis. And I remember sitting there, and the doctor gave us the paper with a paragraph saying, this is what his diagnosis is. He's the first in Canada. I know nothing about it, but we're just going to watch and see. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on his life.
Oh, and since then you found out, of course, that KCNH1 has an absolutely horrid impact on the lives of children and their families.
Absolutely.
Now, Theo is the youngest. He's 20 months old now.
He's 20 months old, and he's the youngest recorded right now.
Youngest recorded.
That we know of.
And you have been in touch with a group of parents whose children have this condition,
Yes.
who have not fared well at all. So there is always this dagger hanging over your head, wondering if this is Theo's fate, or if in some strange manner, for some strange reason, you're going to avoid it. So can you tell us a little bit about this group of people? It must be a very small group of people.
It is. There are 10 children. So at the beginning, we were told that there were only 6 in the entire world. I recently found out from a new genetic doctor that Theodore has that there's 12, I believe, in the world, not 6. And on Facebook, I somehow found a mom from Australia. I got a lead from a friend, actually, who had been searching about this genetic mutation and stumbled across a test that they had done in Australia and a breakthrough that they had for a little boy. And I found the mom on Facebook, and I started speaking to her, and her son has the same genetic mutation that Theodore has. And she invited me onto this group of 10 different children, parents of 10 different children. And all of them have the exact same genetic mutation. All of them have seizures. All the children have seizures. All of the children have low muscle tone, so they're not as strong and sturdy, and their muscles deteriorate. But every single one of them goes a little bit further than that and has very strong, profound physical characteristics that when you look at them, you say, you know, you can identify that there's an underlying issue there. Most of them are not walking, they're in wheelchairs. Some of them are being fed by a gastro tube. Some of them don't talk, the majority of them don't talk. And Theodore is the only one who has been recorded, according to the genetic doctor as well as the moms that I've spoken to, that's walking and talking and has full cognitive ability. His understanding is actually advanced. He understands way more than he should at his age. You'd look at him and you wouldn't think that there was anything wrong. He looks like a very healthy boy, and it goes from 100% to 0%. There's no in between. And so we're trying to figure out if we've somehow beat that system, because I've been a little bit more cautious about his treatment, or if it's going to come in the future, or if maybe he has something completely different in him that the other kids don't have. So we don't have answers. We don't know why he's the only boy living right now, the only child living who is living normal, as much as normal can be for him, right?
As much as normal can be for him, for you, for his sisters, for his dad, for everybody who's involved with you.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts pressure on, an enormous amount of pressure on you. Now, most of us live our lives imagining that everything's just going to keep going the way it is, good or bad, sadly. Many people just kind of give in to when it's bad. Many people just take it for granted when it's good. But of course, you can't do that at all. You have to find ways to monitor every moment of his life. And for that, we've got this wonderful GoFundMe page to raise money for a service dog for Theo, which would help him a lot, would help you a lot. But also there's the other side, which is trying to figure out what's going on with this little boy and how can whatever it is that's making him better, keep making him better. And hopefully be a lesson to others, provide knowledge to others. So on the service dog side, things are moving along nicely. People have been very generous and kind.
Yes, we have several different fundraisers in place for Theo, and the community has really come together. And you actually started the GoFundMe page for Theodore, and
it was your idea. I just wrote it up.
And it snowball affected from there. So from my idea that would have never gone anywhere, you made that come to life, and you did that. And the community has really pulled together to help Theo in so many different ways. And we're actually at half of what it would cost for the service dog to be trained.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So far, yeah.
Fantastic. So the puppy's been born already?
The puppy was born on the 29th of December. I'm actually driving up to see it this coming weekend, and I'm going to meet the breeder and some trainers, and we're going to pick out of the litter which puppy is best suited for Theodore. So these puppies are bred for temperament and service dog work. So they're specifically bred for very specific reasons. And we get first pick of the litter, and it's going to be a very emotional experience. We don't know if we're getting a girl or a boy or which puppy we're getting yet. So it's going to be quite the weekend.
But it's going to inject some joy and some calmness into the family. And of course, you're very knowledgeable about dogs, so it'll be a breeze for you.
Yes, I'm hoping.
All right, so that's coming along nicely. The part that's not coming along nicely, because at this point I would say that Theo's healing is entirely in Theo's hands. He seems to be the only one who has at some level connected with whatever wisdom or knowledge it takes to keep himself on track. You're providing the loving environment, you're providing the safe environment. But when he goes into that coma, where, as you say, he reboots, it's him. And we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is. Now, I've discussed with you some ideas that I have because of the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, which builds on the work of many others, such as Greg Braden, who have dedicated their lives to finding the hows. We know the what's, we know what's happening, but now in the world today with all of the social media, the Dr. Google, the large amount of information to which we have access, everybody is trying to find the why and the how, not just the what. And with Theo, of course, it's undeniable that there's something going on. He's a phenomenon.
He is, and I think I agree with that. Those thoughts that you had. He definitely has those seizures as part of a reboot to his system, because between those 4 to 6 weeks, it's almost as if that's his max that his body can handle, and he has a seizure and he needs to shut down, and he just needs to. It's almost as if his body's there, but his spirit kind of, goes somewhere else and does a little bit of some self-healing.
Yeah.
And because his body is so stable, and we have done EEGs and everything's come out normal, so we know that there's no strained brain activity going on. We know that there's no signs of anything happening. There's no answer. The only answer, I agree with you, is I think that he has those seizures. He reboots his system. He goes into a coma-like state, so he becomes completely unresponsive, self-induced. His body does it himself. And it's like he needs that time to do that self-healing and to find that place that's going to, rejuvenate him and rejuvenate his body. And then it's like he comes back. He wakes up and nothing ever happened.
Now, you mentioned something interesting about the EEG, that there was no reading on the EEG. It's as if there was some activity going on, some electromagnetic activity that was interfering with the EEG. And that would be very much in line with the theory that Dr. Joe Dispenza has promoted, which is that through our emotions, we can elevate the electrical activity in our bodies, activate our pineal gland, and that is where the connection with the quantum field happens, where all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge is, and we can tap into that, and that can change the biology of a body. The question is how to keep Theo doing this during those 4 to 6 weeks so that he doesn't have to deteriorate. If he can do it in 5 days in a coma, then he should be able to do it the rest of the time. But how do you teach a 20-month-old to meditate?
Yeah.
So Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you're listening to this, help.
Yeah, let's make sense of this. Yes.
Because obviously you could, yes, from what we know about prayer and meditation, you, as the closest human bond that he has, should be able to work on that with him. But of course, it needs to be something that enters your consciousness and something that you need to be rested for, to absorb. And rest is something that's been in very small quantities for you.
Like very sparse, yeah.
Very sparse, that's the word.
I'll usually get a couple of days when Theo's in hospital to sleep because I know he's safe, and Dad will take the night shift. And then I'm good for another 4 to 6 weeks of no sleep, and I kind of reboot the same time that Theodore's rebooting.
Okay. Now, we agree that there is something unusual about Theo, and I would say that there's also something unusual about you. I don't know that much about your life, but I know that how stunned I was when I found out that you were a volunteer firefighter. That is not exactly the easiest occupation to bring into your life, certainly not when you're a single mom, and yet you did it for how many years?
Almost 6.
6 years,
yeah.
Okay. Talk about being without sleep, talk about being in constant stress. There is something in your makeup that keeps you going through this against all odds. You're an experiment too.
I think so. I think I am.
I think you are. I think you're a mustard seed for sure. You're that little grain that has been blossoming and growing, and yes, we definitely should put you and Theo into a little cocoon and study you.
But
Except a lot of people would miss you if we did that, like two little sisters who worry a lot about Theo.
Yes. But I think, I think everything that we go through happens for a reason, because my history as a volunteer firefighter has definitely given me the ability to help Theodore, because it's not easy being in a situation like we are in with Theodore, and I've seen him go into cardiac arrest. I've been there, and he's died and come back, and they've had to resuscitate him. And without that background, I don't think that I would be able to do it. Especially being a mom, you're a little bit more sensitive, and especially when it's your own child, it's very, very tough. So I think everything happens for a reason, and all of these trying events that have happened in my life previous was to set me up to be able to take care of Theodore.
I would agree. And in addition to everything happening for a reason, I think everything happens when we're ready for it.
Yes.
And I have seen your calmness under pressure, and I've seen your tremendous love and openness. You just haven't shut down. You haven't. You talk about being worn out, and yet I tell you, you're making a liar of yourself, because you look like you could appear on a magazine cover, even so.
Thank you.
It is quite amazing. There's this theory that we, as I said, our pain is the teacher, suffering is the teacher, and wisdom is the lesson. But the suffering only comes when we have the capacity to feel enough. And you obviously have that capacity to feel enough, and Theo has increased it in you.
Yes.
Not to mention your other two children,
Yes.
because they too came before and helped. And emotion is the prayer. Emotion is, it's that feeling, that love that makes everything different. And I firmly believe that not only Theo, but you are making the difference in his life. We just need to help you a little bit more. So, Shannon, thank you so much for coming in and sharing that story.
Thank you for having me.
We have to unfortunately cut the interview short, but hopefully this will reach a lot of people, and someone else will add a little piece to the puzzle, because a lot of people stand to benefit from what you've been through, what Theo's going through, and heavens, we never know what we're going to be going through.
I believe we're here to help somebody else.
Can't top that. So thank you very much for watching, and please join us next week for another episode of Mustard Seed, and find out about some of the incredible wisdom and wonderful people in our community. God bless.